The crystal ballroom of the Plaza Hotel sparkled like a jewel box that October evening, filled with Manhattan's elite gathered for the annual Children's Hope Foundation Gala. Adrian Blackwood stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, his charcoal gray suit perfectly tailored, his dark hair catching the light from the massive chandeliers above. At 32, he had everything the world believed mattered: a tech empire worth billions, a penthouse that graced magazine covers, and the kind of success that made other men envious. Yet as he watched the crowd of socialites and business magnates mingling below, Adrian felt the familiar hollow ache in his chest. Success had become his prison, and tonight felt like just another performance in a play he no longer wanted to star in. "Adrian, darling, you look positively brooding," came the smooth voice of Evangeline Cross, a prominent art dealer who had been pursuing him for months. She approached with the calculated grace of someone who knew her worth and expected others to recognize it too. "Just enjoying the view," Adrian replied politely, though his attention remained distant. "The view would be much better from my table," she purred, placing a manicured hand on his arm. "I have some fascinating people I'd love you to meet." Before Adrian could respond, a commotion near the auction stage caught his attention. A woman in an elegant midnight blue gown was walking quickly toward the exit, her posture suggesting she was fleeing rather than leaving. Something about her graceful urgency made him forget about Evangeline entirely. The woman in blue Victoria. Sterling had made a terrible mistake coming tonight. She pulled her wrap tighter around her shoulders as she navigated through the crowd, keeping her head down and praying no one would recognize her. The invitation had arrived at her small apartment 3 weeks ago, forwarded from an old address, and in a moment of weakness, she had decided to attend. She missed this world sometimes, missed feeling beautiful and important, missed belonging somewhere. But the moment she walked into the ballroom and saw the familiar faces, the whispered conversations that stopped when she passed, she remembered why she had left this life behind. The Sterling name still carried weight in these circles, but it also carried scandal, shame, and secrets she wasn't ready to face. She had almost made it to the exit when disaster struck. In her haste to escape, she collided with a waiter carrying a tray of champagne glasses. The crystals shattered against the marble floor with a sound like breaking stars, and suddenly, every eye in the room was on her. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to the waiter, dropping to her knees to help gather the larger pieces of glass. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment as she felt the weight of judgment from the crowd around her. "Please, miss, let me handle this," the waiter said kindly, but Victoria was already reaching for a shard of crystal when a warm hand gently caught her wrist. "You'll cut yourself," came a deep voice that sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. Victoria looked up into the most striking pair of gray eyes she had ever seen. The man kneeling beside her had the kind of face that belonged in Renaissance paintings, strong and noble, with dark hair that fell slightly across his forehead. He was helping her to her feet with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with his obvious wealth and power. "Are you hurt?" Adrian asked, his eyes scanning her face with genuine concern. Up close, she was even more beautiful than he had thought from across the room. Her auburn hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, revealing the graceful line of her neck, and her green eyes held depths that spoke of intelligence and hidden pain. "No, I'm fine," Victoria said, though her voice trembled slightly. "I should go." "Wait," Adrian said, not ready to let this mysterious woman disappear into the night. "I'm Adrian Blackwood." The recognition flickered in her eyes immediately. Everyone in this world knew the Blackwood name, knew the story of the tech prodigy who had built an empire before he was 30. But instead of the usual calculating interest he was accustomed to seeing, Victoria's expression grew cautious, almost fearful. "I really should leave," she said again, taking a step backward. "At least let me buy you a drink to make up for the collision," Adrian said, surprising himself with his persistence. He wasn't usually one to chase after women, but something about her pulled at him in a way he couldn't explain. Victoria hesitated. Every instinct told her to run, to get as far away from this world and this dangerously attractive man as possible. But when was the last time someone had looked at her the way he was looking at her now, as if she were something precious rather than something broken? "One drink," she found herself saying. The dance of souls the hotel bar was quieter than the ballroom, decorated in rich burgundy and gold, with intimate lighting that made everything feel like a secret. Adrian had secured them a corner booth where they could talk without being overheard, though Victoria noticed how people still stole glances in their direction. "So what brings you to tonight's circus?" Adrian asked, his gray eyes twinkling with humor as he referenced the sometimes absurd nature of high society gatherings. Victoria laughed despite herself, the sound genuine and musical. "I used to be part of this world. Tonight was my attempt to see if I still belonged, and the verdict? I definitely don't," she said, but she was smiling now, the tension in her shoulders beginning to ease. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing as naturally as breathing. Adrian found himself sharing things he had never told anyone, his loneliness despite being constantly surrounded by people, his feeling that success had cost him his soul, his secret dream of walking away from it all and finding something real. Victoria, in turn, found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years. She told him about her love of literature, her work at a small nonprofit helping at-risk youth, her belief that real wealth came from making a difference in people's lives, rather than accumulating zeros in a bank account. "You're not what I expected," Adrian said as the evening grew late. "What did you expect? Someone who wanted something from me?" he admitted. "That's usually why beautiful women talk to me at these events." Victoria's expression grew sad. "I don't want anything from you, Adrian. I learned a long time ago that wanting things from people like you only leads to heartbreak." The comment stung, but Adrian recognized the truth in it. He had seen enough gold diggers and social climbers to know the type. But Victoria was different. She seemed genuinely disinterested in his wealth, more interested in his thoughts and dreams than his portfolio. As the bar began to empty, neither wanted the evening to end. When Adrian suggested they walk through Central Park, Victoria found herself agreeing despite every rational thought screaming at her to go home. Under the stars, the park was magical at night, the city lights creating a golden halo around them as they walked the quiet paths. They had both abandoned their formal shoes, walking barefoot on the cool grass like children escaped from a stuffy dinner party. "Tell me something true," Adrian said, as they sat on a bench overlooking the lake. "Something you've never told anyone else?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the wooden bench between them. "I used to believe in fairy tales," she said finally. "I thought if you were good enough, pure enough, loved hard enough, everything would work out the way it was supposed to. I learned that real life doesn't care about fairy tales. What happened to change your mind?" She looked at him then, her green eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I fell in love with someone who belonged to a different world. Someone whose family made it very clear that I would never be good enough. I learned that love isn't always enough to bridge the gap between who you are and who people expect you to be. Adrian felt something twist in his chest. "Their loss," he said quietly. "Was it?" Victoria asked. "Or was I just naive to think love could conquer all?" Instead of answering, Adrian reached over and gently took her hand. "I think," he said slowly, "that the right love doesn't ask you to change who you are. It celebrates who you are." The connection between them was electric, impossible to ignore. When Adrian leaned closer, Victoria didn't pull away. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, like the first note of a symphony that promised to build into something magnificent. "I should go," Victoria whispered against his lips, but she made no move to leave. "Stay with me," Adrian said, his voice rough with emotion. "Just for tonight. Let me show you that not everyone in my world is heartless." Victoria knew she should. Sano knew that getting involved with someone like Adrian Blackwood would only lead to pain. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something she had thought was lost forever. The possibility of being truly seen, truly valued, truly loved. "Just for tonight," she agreed. The night that changed everything, Adrian's penthouse was everything Victoria had expected and nothing like she had imagined. Yes, it was luxurious beyond measure. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city and art that belonged in museums. But it was also somehow warm, lived in, with books scattered on tables and a guitar leaning against one wall. "You play?" Victoria asked, running her fingers along the guitar strings. "When I can't sleep," Adrian admitted. "Which is most nights. Play something for me." Adrian picked up the guitar and began to play a soft, haunting melody. His voice, when he began to sing, was rich and smooth, filling the space between them with something beautiful and raw. Victoria found herself moving closer, drawn by the vulnerability in his music. When the song ended, the silence between them was charged with possibility. This time, when they kissed, there was nothing tentative about it. The passion that had been building all evening finally found its release. They made love with the desperate intensity of two people who knew they were stealing time from a world that would try to tear them apart. Adrian worshipped her body with his hands and mouth as if he were memorizing every curve, every sigh, every moment of pleasure he could give her. Victoria had never felt so cherished, so completely desired. In Adrian's arms, she remembered what it felt like to be precious to someone, to be wanted not for what she could provide, but simply for who she was. Afterward, they lay entwined in his massive bed, the city sparkling below them like a field of fallen stars. Victoria traced lazy patterns on Adrian's chest while he played with her hair, both of them reluctant to break the spell that had settled over them. "I want to see you again," Adrian said into the comfortable darkness. Victoria's hand stilled on his chest. "Adrian, I know what you're thinking. That I'm just another rich man looking for a temporary distraction. But this what happened between us tonight, this was real." Victoria lifted her head to look at him, her heart breaking at the sincerity in his eyes. "It was real," she agreed. "But real doesn't always mean possible. Why not? We're both adults. We both felt something tonight. What's stopping us from seeing where this could lead?" Victoria wanted to tell him everything then about her past, about why she couldn't afford to believe in fairy tales anymore, about the reasons she had built walls around her heart. But looking at his hopeful face, she couldn't bear to destroy the magic of what they had shared. "Let's just have tonight," she said, kissing him softly. "Let's make it perfect." And it was perfect. They talked until dawn, sharing dreams and fears and secrets. They made love again as the sun rose over the city, slow and tender and filled with an emotion that neither dared to name. When Adrian finally fell asleep, exhausted and content, Victoria lay awake watching him face every peaceful breath, storing the memory away like a treasure she could carry with her always. Then, as quietly as a ghost, she slipped from his bed, dressed in the pre-dawn darkness, and walked out of his life. She left no note, no phone number, no way for him to find her. She simply vanished like smoke, leaving behind only the lingering scent of her perfume and the memory of the most perfect night of Adrian Blackwood's life. When Adrian woke to find her gone, he felt as if someone had reached into his chest and torn out his heart. He searched the penthouse frantically, hoping to find some clue, some way to contact her. But Victoria Sterling disappeared as completely as if she had never existed at all. The only evidence that their night together had been real was the indent in the pillow where her head had rested and the ache in his chest that told him his life had just been irrevocably changed by a woman whose last name he didn't even know. 3 months had passed since Victoria Sterling vanished from Adrian Blackwood's life. He had become a man possessed. His penthouse, once a sanctuary of order and success, now resembled a detective's war room. Photographs, documents, and maps covered every surface. Computer screens displayed search results, social media profiles, and private investigator reports. The guitar that once brought him peace sat silent in the corner. Gathering dust, Adrian stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city where she had disappeared. Dark circles rimmed his eyes, evidence of countless sleepless nights spent searching for a ghost. His business empire continued to thrive, but only because he had handed most operations to his capable team. His heart and mind were consumed by one mission: finding the woman who had changed everything in a single night. "Sir, Detective Morrison is here," announced Grace Chen, Adrian's assistant, from the doorway. Her usually composed demeanor showed cracks of concern as she watched her employer's steady decline. James. Stride of a man who had delivered disappointing news to many times. A former police detective turned private investigator, Morrison specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. His weathered face and graying hair spoke of decades spent navigating the darker corners of human nature. "Tell me you have something," Adrian said without turning from the window. Morrison set his briefcase on the marble coffee table, avoiding the scattered papers and empty coffee cups. "Adrian, we need to talk. Really talk. Give me the report, James." "The report is the same as last week and the week before. We've exhausted every lead, followed every trace. The woman you're looking for has simply vanished." Adrian finally turned, his gray eyes blazing with desperate determination. Then we're not looking hard enough. Expand the search. Check other cities, other states. People don't just disappear. They do when they want to, Morrison said gently. They do when they have good reason to. The price of obsession. Grace. Chen watched from the doorway as Adrian dismissed Morrison with barely contained frustration. She had worked for Adrian for 5 years, had seen him through hostile takeovers and corporate battles that would have broken lesser men. But she had never seen him like this, hollow-eyed and haunted, chasing a memory that was destroying him from the inside out. "Mr. Blackwood," she said carefully, "your sister called again. Emma is worried about you." Adrian waved dismissively. "Tell Emma I'm fine." "With respect, sir, you're not fine. You've lost 15 pounds. You haven't attended a board meeting in 2 weeks. And yesterday I found you asleep at your desk with your head on a pile of search results." Adrian looked at Grace as if seeing her for the first time in months. She was a petite woman in her early 30s, with intelligent dark eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Her loyalty to him was absolute, which made her current expression of concern all the more troubling. "She was real, Grace," Adrian said, his voice cracking slightly. "What we had that night. It was the most real thing that's ever happened to me." "I believe you, Grace," said softly. "But sir, what if she doesn't want to be found? What if she left? Because she knew this obsession would consume you?" The question hit Adrian like a physical blow, sank into his leather chair, suddenly looking older than his 32 years. Then why did she stay that night? Why did she let me fall in love with her? Grace approached carefully, as if dealing with a wounded animal. Maybe she fell in love too. And maybe that's exactly why she had to leave. The sisters' intervention. Emma Blackwood arrived at Adrian's penthouse that evening like a force of nature. 3 years younger than her brother, she possessed the same striking features and steel spine that had made the Blackwood name synonymous with success. But where Adrian had always been driven by ambition, Emma was motivated by fierce protectiveness. Of those she loved, she swept through the penthouse, taking in the chaos with barely disguised horror. "Adrian Christopher Blackwood, what have you done to yourself?" Adrian looked up from his computer screen where he was cross-referencing society photos from the past 5 years. "Emma, Grace called you. Grace was right to call me. Look at this place. Look at yourself." Emma's voice was sharp with worry and frustration. "You're killing yourself over a woman who clearly doesn't want to be found." "You don't understand," Adrian began, but Emma cut him off. "Then help me understand."
Oh.
"Me about this woman who has turned my brilliant, successful brother into this obsessed shell of himself." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his fingers absently tracing the edge of a photograph. A blurry image from a security camera that might or might not have been Victoria leaving his building that morning 3 months ago. "Name was Victoria," he said finally. "It was beautiful, but not in the calculated way of the women in our circle. She was intelligent, passionate about helping people. She made me feel like the man I could be instead of the man everyone expects me to be." Emma's expression softened slightly. She left without a word. "She was gone when I woke up. No note, no number, no last name, nothing. Adrian, honey, maybe that was her way of telling you it was just meant to be one night." Adrian's head snapped up, his eyes blazing. "It wasn't just one night, what we shared. Emma, I've never felt anything like it. She's out there somewhere and I'm going to find her." Emma sat down across from her brother, her heart breaking at the pain in his eyes. "And then what? What if she's married? What if she has children? What if she left because she was running from something terrible?" "Then I'll help her," Adrian said, without hesitation. "Whatever she's running from, whatever she needs, I'll give it to her." It's the first real lead to weeks later. Morrison burst into Adrian's office at Blackwood Industries with the first genuine breakthrough in months. His usually controlled demeanor was animated with excitement. "I found something," he announced, spreading papers across Adrian's mahogany desk. Not Victoria directly, but a trail. Adrian's heart hammered against his ribs. "What kind of trail?" "The charity that night, Children's Hope Foundation. I went back through their guest lists, cross-referenced with known associates, family connections. Look at this." Morrison pointed to a highlighted name on a list from 5 years earlier. "Victoria Sterling, Sterling Foundation, Sterling Foundation." Adrian's mind raced, as in Sterling Industries, the very same. Thomas Sterling, the shipping magnate. Victoria Sterling would be his daughter. Adrian felt the world tilt beneath him. Thomas Sterling was a name every businessman knew. Old money, established power, the kind of family that had shaped American industry for generations. But 5 years ago, Sterling Industries had collapsed in a spectacular scandal involving embezzlement and fraud. "Where's Thomas Sterling now?" Adrian demanded. "That's where it gets interesting," Morrison said grimly. "He's serving a 15-year sentence in federal prison. His assets were seized, his family blacklisted. If Victoria is his daughter, she lost everything when he fell." The pieces began falling into place in Adrian's mind. Victoria's reluctance to give her last name, her comment about falling in love with someone from a different world, her fear that she would never be good enough. She wasn't just any socialite fallen on hard times. She was the daughter of one of the biggest financial criminals of the decade. "Where is she now?" Adrian asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Morrison's expression grew somber. "It's what we need to figure out. But Adrian, if she's Thomas Sterling's daughter, there's a good chance she's been living under an assumed identity. The Sterling name carries a lot of shame these days." The coastal town discovery, the breakthrough, came through an unexpected source. An elderly woman named Margaret Whitfield, who had been the Sterling family housekeeper for 30 years. Morrison tracked her down to a small apartment in Queens, where she was living on a modest pension and the memories of better times. "Miss Victoria." Margaret's weathered face lit up at the mention of her former charge. "Oh, that sweet girl. A shame what happened to her family. Do you know where she is now?" Morrison asked gently. Margaret studied him carefully. "Why do you want to know? She's been through enough heartbreak." Morrison showed her Adrian's photograph. "This man is in love with her. He's been searching for months." The elderly woman's expression softened. "She mentioned him once, said she met someone who made her remember what it felt like to believe in good things again. She was so scared, so convinced she would only bring him pain." "Where is she?" "Margaret," Morrison pressed. "Lighthouse Bay," Margaret said finally. "It's a small town on the Maine coast. She's working at a women's shelter there, using her mother's maiden name, Victoria Wells. She chose that place because it's where her mother used to take her as a child. Before everything went wrong, a race against time, Adrian chartered a helicopter the moment Morrison delivered the news. As they flew north along the coast, his heart pounded with a mixture of hope and terror. What if Victoria had built a new life that didn't include him? What if seeing him again only brought back painful memories she was trying to forget? Lighthouse Bay was exactly what its name suggested, a picturesque coastal town dominated by a historic lighthouse that stood sentinel over the rocky shoreline. Quaint shops and restaurants lined the main street, and fishing boats bobbed peacefully in the harbor. It was the kind of place where people came to disappear, to start over, to heal from wounds the world had inflicted. The Lighthouse Bay Women's Shelter was a converted Victorian mansion on a hill overlooking the ocean, its welcoming exterior belied the serious work being done inside, providing refuge for women and children, escaping domestic violence and abuse. Adrian stood outside the shelter for nearly an hour, working up the courage to knock on the door. What if she refused to see him? What if she had moved on completely? What if his obsessive search had been based on a fantasy he had constructed around one perfect night? Finally, as the sun began to set over the water, he approached the front door and rang the bell. The woman who answered was not Victoria, but a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Victoria Wells," Adrian said, his mouth suddenly dry. It's personal." The woman, probably the shelter director, studied him carefully. "And you are?" "Adrian Blackwood." "I'm an old friend." Recognition flickered in the woman's eyes. Clearly Victoria had mentioned him, though whether positively or negatively, Adrian couldn't tell. "Wait here," the woman said. "I'll see if she wants to see you." Victoria was in the shelter's garden when Director Catherine Mills found her, kneeling among the tomato plants she had helped the residents grow. The late afternoon sun caught the auburn highlights in her hair, and for a moment Catherine was struck by how much healthier and happier Victoria looked than when she had first arrived 8 months ago. "Victoria, honey, there's someone here to see you." Victoria looked up, soil on her hands and a peaceful smile on her face. In the months since arriving in Lighthouse Bay, she had found something she thought was lost forever: purpose and peace. Working with women who had survived the worst humanity could offer had shown her that strength came not from what you had, but from what you could give to others. Is it one of the social workers? Victoria asked, wiping her hands on her gardening apron. Catherine's expression was careful, concerned. It's a man named Adrian Blackwood. He says he's an old friend. The blood drained from Victoria's face. She gripped the edge of the raised garden bed so tightly her knuckles went white. After 8 months of carefully constructed peace, her past had found her. I can send him away, Catherine offered gently. Just say the word. Victoria closed her eyes, her mind racing. She had known this day might come, had even dreamed about it on lonely nights, when the memory of their perfect evening together overwhelmed her carefully built defenses. But she had also convinced herself that Adrian would eventually move on. Find someone appropriate, someone who could stand beside him in his world without bringing shame and scandal. No, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper.
I'll
See him, but Catherine, if this goes badly, if he's here to cause trouble, he'll be right outside the door, Catherine assured her. This is your sanctuary, Victoria. No one can hurt you here. The reunion Adrian was pacing the shelter's small reception area when he heard footsteps on the stairs. He turned, and his heart stopped. There she was, the woman who had haunted his dreams for 3 months, who had turned his ordered world into chaos, who had disappeared like smoke and left him questioning everything he thought he knew about. Love, she was thinner than he remembered, her auburn hair longer and pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore jeans and a soft blue sweater. No makeup, no jewelry except for a simple silver necklace. She looked younger somehow, more natural and heartbreakingly beautiful. Hello, Adrian, Victoria said, her voice steady despite the tremor he could see in her hands. Victoria? Her name was a prayer on his lips. You're here, you're real. They stood facing each other across the small room, 3 months of separation and longing stretching between them like an ocean. Victoria's green eyes searched his face, taking in the changes, the weight loss, the dark circles, the desperate hope that radiated from every line of his body. You look terrible, she said softly, and despite everything, Adrian laughed. You look perfect, he replied. You always look perfect. Adrian, what are you doing here? How did you find me? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken accusations. Victoria had worked so hard to disappear, to create a new life where the sins of her father couldn't touch her or anyone she cared about. I've been looking for you for 3 months, Adrian said, taking a careful step closer. I hired private investigators, searched through every database, followed every lead. I've thought about nothing else but finding you. Victoria's face crumpled with guilt and pain. Oh, Adrian, you shouldn't have done that. You should have let me go. Let you go? Adrian's voice rose with emotion. How could I let you go when that night we shared was the most real thing that's ever happened to me? How could I let you go when I'm in love with you? The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She had dreamed of hearing them, had imagined what it would feel like to have someone like Adrian Blackwood say he loved her. But she had also known that love wouldn't be enough to bridge the gap between who she was and who he needed. You don't love me, she said, wrapping her arms around herself protectively. You love the idea of me. You love the mystery, the chase. You don't know who I really am. Then tell me, Adrian said, moving closer still. Tell me everything. Tell me why you left. Tell me why you've been hiding. Tell me what you're so afraid of. The truth unveiled, Victoria looked at this man who had turned her world upside down. This brilliant, successful, beautiful man who claimed to love her and felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. For 8 months, she had been Victoria Wells, shelter volunteer, anonymous helper of broken women. But looking into Adrian's gray eyes, she remembered what it felt like to be seen, truly seen, by someone who mattered. My name is Victoria Sterling, she said finally, her voice barely audible. I'm the daughter of Thomas Sterling, the man who stole $40 million from pension funds and children's charities. I'm the daughter of one of the most despised criminals in America. Adrian's expression didn't change, didn't show the shock or disgust she had expected. Instead, his eyes filled with understanding. I know, he said gently. I figured it out 2 weeks ago. Victoria stared at him in amazement. You know, and you're still here? Victoria, I don't care if your father is serving time for embezzlement. I don't care if your family name is associated with scandal. I care about you, the woman who works with abuse survivors, who gives everything she has to help others. who made me feel alive for the first time in my life. Tears began to stream down Victoria's face. You don't understand. I lost everything, Adrian. My family's money, our reputation, our place in society. When my father was arrested, I became a pariah overnight. Former friends crossed the street. To avoid me, the man I thought I was going to marry called off our engagement via text message. I went from being Victoria Sterling, socialite and philanthropist, to being the criminal's daughter that everyone wanted to forget. Adrian said, the pieces finally falling into place. I changed my name, moved here, started over. I thought I could build a life where my father's crimes couldn't hurt anyone, where I could actually do some good to make up for all the damage he caused. Adrian reached out slowly, carefully, and took her hands in his. You beautiful, selfless fool. Don't you realize that running away from me hurt me more than any scandal ever could? I was protecting you, Victoria whispered. Your family, your business, your reputation, associating with me would have destroyed everything you've worked for. Everything I've worked for means nothing without you, Adrian said fiercely. These past 3 months have shown me what my life is worth without love, without connection, without you. It's worth nothing. The choice before Victoria could respond, the shelter door opened and Catherine Mills entered with a grim expression. Victoria, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a problem. She handed Victoria a tablet displaying a gossip website. The headline made Victoria's blood run cold. Billionaire Adrian Blackwood's secret obsession, hunting down criminal's daughter. The article was accompanied by photos Adrian entering the shelter, Victoria in the garden, even shots of Adrian's penthouse. War room with its maps and search materials. Someone had been watching, documenting, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. How? Victoria whispered, her face pale with shock. Adrian's expression darkened as he recognized the writing style. The calculated cruelty of the exposed Evangeline Cross, the art dealer from the gala. She's been trying to get my attention for months, and when I started my search for you, she decided to destroy us both, Victoria finished, understanding flooding her features. The article was devastating in its thoroughness. It detailed Victoria's fall from grace, her father's crimes, and Adrian's desperate obsession with finding her. It painted their love story as a sordid tale of a criminal's daughter seducing a billionaire and a powerful man's descent into madness. This is exactly what I was afraid of, Victoria said, her voice hollow with defeat. Now, everyone knows. Your reputation, your business. I don't care, Adrian said firmly, but Victoria could see the worry in his eyes. Catherine cleared her throat. There's more. Reporters are gathering outside. About a dozen so far, with more coming. Victoria looked out the window and saw the news vans. Photographers with their long lenses. The reporters preparing for live broadcasts. Her sanctuary had been invaded. Her peaceful new life destroyed in a matter of hours. I have to go, she said, moving toward the stairs. I need to pack. Leave town before this gets worse. No. Adrian's voice was sharp with determination. No more running, Victoria. We face this together. Together. Victoria laughed bitterly. Adrian, that article will be picked up by every major news outlet by morning. By tomorrow, the whole world will know that Adrian Blackwood is involved with the daughter of Thomas Sterling. Your stock price will plummet. Your board will demand your resignation. Everything you've built will be at risk. Risk, Adrian said, his gray eyes blazing with conviction. I spent 3 months learning what my life is worth without you. I'd rather lose everything and have you than keep everything and lose you again. The stand as if summoned by their conversation. Adrian's phone began ringing. He glanced at the screen and saw his assistant's name. When he answered, Grace's voice was tight with tension. Adrian, you need to get back to New York immediately. The board is calling an emergency meeting. The shareholders are panicking. Your father is threatening to invoke the morality clause in your contract. Tell them all to go to hell, Adrian said calmly, never taking his eyes off Victoria. Adrian, please be serious. This could destroy everything. The only thing that would destroy me is losing Victoria again. Handle the board, Grace. Do whatever you have to do. I'll be back when I'm back. He hung up the phone and looked at Victoria, who was staring at him in amazement. You just threw away your empire for me, she whispered. I didn't throw it away. I chose what matters most. Adrian moved closer, his hands framing her face gently. Victoria, I spent 15 years building a business empire, accumulating wealth and power that I thought would make me happy. But one night with you showed me what happiness actually feels like. If I have to choose between being a billionaire and being the man you love, I choose love every time. Victoria felt her last defenses crumble. This man, this wonderful, impossible man, was willing to sacrifice everything for her. Not because she was perfect, not because she could enhance his status or wealth, but simply because he loved her. Reporters, she said weakly. The scandal. Let them come, Adrian said, his voice strong with resolve. Let them write their stories and take their pictures. I'm not ashamed of loving you, Victoria Sterling. I'm proud of it. We're the strongest, most compassionate, most beautiful woman I've ever known. If the world can't see that, it's there. Loss. The new beginning. An hour later, Adrian and Victoria stepped out of the shelter hand in hand. Facing the wall of reporters and photographers that had gathered outside, camera flashes exploded like lightning as questions were shouted from every direction. Mr. Blackwood, is it true you're involved with Thomas Sterling's daughter? Victoria, how long have you been manipulating Mr. Blackwood? Adrian, what do you say to investors who are concerned about your judgment? Adrian raised his hand, and gradually, the chaos subsided enough for him to speak. I'll make this simple, he said, his voice carrying clearly in the evening air. Victoria Sterling is the woman I love. She's dedicated her life to helping women and children who have been victims of violence and abuse. She's one of the finest people I've ever known, and I'm proud to stand beside her. But what about her father's crimes? A reporter shouted. Victoria Sterling is not responsible for her father's actions, Adrian replied firmly. She spent the past year of her life working to help others, using her own painful experiences to bring healing to people who need it most. If you want to judge someone by their family's mistakes rather than their own character, that says more about you than it does about her. Victoria squeezed his hand, finding strength in his unwavering support. When he looked at her encouragingly, she stepped forward. I can't change what my father did, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. I can't undo the pain he caused or the trust he broke. But I can choose how to live my own life. I choose to spend it helping people who have been hurt, who need someone to believe in them, who need a second chance. If that makes me unsuitable for Mr. Blackwood's world, then maybe his world needs to change. The questions continued, but Adrian and Victoria had said what they needed to say. They walked through the crowd of reporters, ignoring the chaos around them, focused only on each other and the future they were choosing to build together. The epilogue. 1 year later, the Lighthouse Bay Women's Shelter had been transformed. What was once a struggling facility operating on a shoestring budget had become a model program, thanks to a massive donation from the newly established Sterling Blackwood Foundation. The renovated Victorian mansion now housed twice as many women and children, offered job training programs, and had a state-of-the-art child care center. Victoria stood in the garden she had helped design, watching children play in the sunshine while their mothers attended counseling sessions or job training classes. The past year had brought challenges she never could have imagined. Hostile media coverage, death threats from people who blamed her for her father's crimes, and the constant pressure of living in the public eye as Adrian Blackwood's partner. But it had also brought unexpected joys. Their foundation was making a real difference in the lives of vulnerable families. Adrian had proven that his commitment to her was absolute, standing by her through every storm. And most surprisingly, many people had rallied to their defense, inspired by their love story and Victoria's dedication to helping others. Mrs. Blackwood. The voice belonged to Sarah, one of the shelter's newest residents. A young mother who had fled an abusive marriage with her 2 small children. Victoria turned, still not quite used to her new name. Adrian had proposed 6 months ago, right here, in this garden, with a ring he had designed himself, simple, elegant, perfect. They had married in a small ceremony at the lighthouse, surrounded by the women and children from the shelter and the few friends and family members who truly mattered. What is it, Sarah? I just wanted to thank you, the young woman said, her eyes bright with tears. For everything. For giving us a place to heal. For helping me find a job. For showing me that it's possible to start over. Victoria smiled, her heart full. You did the hard work, Sarah. You found your own strength. But you helped me believe I had strength to find, Sarah replied, You and Mr. Blackwood both. The way he looks at you, it gives us hope that there are good men in the world." As if summoned by their conversation, Adrian appeared in the garden. Doorway he had changed to over the past year, softened somehow, more at peace. His business empire had survived the scandal, though it looked very different now. He had restructured Blackwood Industries to focus on social impact investing, using his wealth and influence to support causes that mattered. "Ladies," he said with a smile, approaching with 2 cups of coffee, "how are my favorite women today?" "We were just talking about hope," Victoria said, accepting her coffee and the kiss he pressed to her temple. "Ah, my favorite subject," Adrian replied, wrapping his arm around his wife's waist. As Sarah returned to the main building, Adrian and Victoria stood together in the garden, watching the children play. The lighthouse in the distance caught the afternoon sun, sending beams of light across the water. "Any regrets?" Victoria asked, a question that had become their daily ritual. "Only that it took me so long to find you," Adrian replied. "The same answer he gave every day?" "And what about tomorrow?" Victoria asked, the second part of their ritual. Adrian looked at his wife, this extraordinary woman who had taught him that real wealth came from love and service to others, and smiled. "Tomorrow we keep building," he said, "together." They kissed as the lighthouse beam swept across them, 2 souls who had found each other across the vastness of the world and chosen to create something beautiful from the ashes of their separate pasts. Their love story had begun with a single night that changed everything, but it would continue for all the nights to come.